Pick and roll coverage. Who's supposed to call the coverage out?
Big man.
The big man.
I call the coverage out. There's a timeout. He turned, get screened, and come over there upset. That ain't the coverage I call. He come out his mouth sideways because you wrong. I'm not him for you to think you finna talk crazy to when you dead f***ing wrong. I'll beat you up on this bench.
Is that what you told him?
Straight the f*** up.
What it do? Welcome to the J-Boy Sports Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Hit that notification bell to all so you don't miss anything that we produce. You also want to comment because ball is life. I will reply. Hang out towards the end for some suggested videos. This was a snippet of, and actually it was kind of the whole story, I guess, for the most part, of Kenyon Martin and his interactions with Chris Paul. Now, Kenyon Martin has been somebody who has been critical of certain things that Chris Paul has done. He's gone as far as to say that he feels like Chris Paul does sneaky things behind players' backs with management, and Chris Paul was also a part of the NBA association. I think the head office or whatever you call that, when president of the Players Association, or he's been second in command or something like that in the past. And Kenyon Martin was never sold, right? And this is just giving you an example of one of the reasons why, is because he's like, you did something that I didn't tell you to do. You got messed up, and then you're coming over complaining and barking at me, and that don't make no sense. But this is just an example of why, right? I said in my last video in part 2, when we listened to what Lou Will had to say, with Chris Paul, 2 things can be true at the same time, right? Ultra competitor, I guess 3. Ultra competitor, could be a jerk, but wants to win. You know what I mean? So, and I guess ultra competitor and wanting to win are kind of the same thing. So that's why I don't know if it's 2 or 3, whatever. But we're going to listen to the rest of what Gills Arena had to say about this Chris Paul situation in a vacuum in general. But I wanted to start it off by giving you that little story that, Kenyon Martin explained. Keep that mindset as we're moving through this entire series. There's already 2 before this. There's part 1 and part 2. Check those out if you haven't checked those out, and then check out part 3 or whatever order you want to. All right, hang on towards the end of this video for part 4. Let's listen to what Gills Arena has to say.
We've heard things in the past that Chris Paul has been difficult to play with. This coming out about him challenging people within coaching staff, players, and front office. It's not liked, but he's done it before. Speaking from experience, being on the team with him.
He always do that sneaky.
When you don't mind being that guy, the guy that will tell it how it is, a lot of people don't be liking to hear it, especially when you're already at 5 and 16 or some like that, right?
That they
want his back kicked in. Turn around to the front, I'll kick you in your chest. But it ain't about your feelings. Put your feelings in your mother pocket.
Don't hold me accountable if you can't do it no more.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
No, I think he abuses his power.
What I'm saying is, if you was who you were when you were younger, and you was the all-NBA player, and you was the top 5 or top 1 point guard or whatever, that was your resume.
Yeah.
You 40 years old, this your last year, shut the up.
Exactly.
Sit down there, enjoy.
Yeah.
Don't come in here and tell me
Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't tell me nothing. I don't want to hear about nothing you had going on 57 years ago. Who you are as Chris Paul, we know what the demand. We don't need that right here. Right? That's not our personalities. Right. Don't talk to us like that.
And we lose.
Chill,
that
relax,
shit.
Understand this your last year. Go out there, wave, do your thing, because that's what you deserve. Fighting with me every day? Nah.
And honestly, these are the guys from Gills Arena. This is actually hilarious, man. The truth of the matter is, I think all of them played with Chris Paul before. I believe Swaggy P played with Chris Paul on the Clippers before. Brandon Jennings didn't play with him on the Clippers, but Brandon told a story a while back, just to give you a quick recap, of how Chris Paul came to see him. I think he was with LeBron and some other people at the time, and they came to see him play. And he said Chris Paul was just hating on him for no reason, like just not respecting him. And he never forgot about that, right? So realistically, this whole thing here is just kind of explaining there's 2 sides to this story, man. You know what I mean? Depending upon who you are, I think Chris Paul treated certain people a little bit differently, maybe. And maybe he didn't treat them differently. Maybe you just garnered a certain level of respect from him. I don't know. Like, people complained about the Kobe Bryant and Smush Parker thing, right? How Smush Parker said Kobe didn't talk to him. But that's one example of somebody that didn't get along with Kobe. I haven't heard many other ones. Chris Paul got a lot of people that don't get along with him. This whole panel basically does not like this dude, does not mess with him. Except Gil. Gil actually has decent stories of him. I think Gil talked about one time how Chris Paul and him helped each other get better in the summer, or Chris Paul helped him get better by showing up to practice with him one summer or something like that. So maybe Gil has a decent opinion, but as you can see, even Gil is saying on the back end, like, yo, you not the same CP3 no more. You can't be coming in here and making it hard for me to move through my life, to live my life. And you got to take that with a grain of salt because remember, it's Gil. Gil kind of is like no chill, have fun, laid back, everything's a game Gil. We can't act like that's not the case. If you want to win, Gil usually wants to play, and that's even in the prime of his career from what I've heard, But of course, Rashad's going to take the approach more similar to like a Kobe or a Mike, which is where like, yo, I don't give a freak about your feelings. Why do I care about your feelings? Are we here to win or lose? So I'm going to say some stuff that people don't like. But there's always a level of politics involved. And like I said in episode 2, right, this is part 3. Check out part 1 and part 2. And part 2 with Lou Will, the main thing that really did it in, according to Lou Will, is criticizing management. CP3 don't have no chill either. He's criticizing everybody, right? So even if, like Rashad said, like, oh, well, we're here to win. Why do I have, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do all these games? You got to be careful who you criticize, man. And like Gil said, he's not the old Chris Paul. He's not the Chris Paul that's the number one attraction. I think he's averaging like 2 points a game. That's why a lot of these teams get rid of veterans now, because they want to be on some nonsense, in my opinion. So two things can be true at the same time, right? Chris may be hard to deal with, but he also wants to win and hold people accountable. And then the other thing that may be true is that maybe he did too much, with the organization. Maybe he did too much. And they just had enough. I think that's fair, and I think that makes sense. They just had enough. They didn't want to deal with it no more. They didn't want having the pressure on their backs. But again, this is the Clippers, guys. This is not the Thunder. This is not the Lakers. This is not the Celtics. This is not the Spurs. This is not even Dallas has fallen apart recently. But this is not these perennial teams that seem to be moving. This isn't the Heat. This ain't the Miami Heat. You understand? Chris Paul, they probably would love him in Miami because Pat Riley's probably a harder dictator than Chris is. So that ain't going to bother Pat or Alonzo Mourning. But when people aren't used to that and you're coming in there with fire and brimstone, it rubs people the wrong way. That seems like that's what happened. That seems like that's what happened. So, and Rashad McCants joked, Chris Paul, he'll hit you in the front and the back. Pause. No diddy. That's just the type of dude he is. So that's the perspective of the dudes from Gills Arena. Only one guy really was like, yo, he's trying to win, right? The rest of them, one told you how he was going to beat him up because he called the coverage, then he didn't do it, and then tried to come back and blame him, which is stupid. And shows that you have some weird issues going on there. And then I told you there's another video of Kenyon Martin talking about how he thinks Chris Paul does shady things, even with management behind the scenes to other players. Right? And then we hear what the rest of the panel has to say. A lot of people are like, yo, like, what are we doing? And Gil, who honestly has never had anything necessarily bad to say about Paul before, is kind of like, yo, bro, like, nah, we're not doing that. Nah. You're not who you used to be. Get in here and shut the freak up. That's basically what he said, right? So we're going to leave it there. We got to go on to part 4. Okay? We got to go on to part 4. Don't give up yet. Don't quit. All right? We still got a little bit more left to go. Got 2 more parts. And in part 4, we're actually going to listen to what Ty Lue had to say. Because, it ain't no fun if the homies can't get none. We're going to see if what he says is for real or basically full of crap. Because it's going to be one or the other, right? So thank you for listening this long. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to all so you can catch all the 5 parts of this series. Make sure you comment, Ball is Life. I will reply, and hang on towards the end for the suggested episode 4 that we know you're looking forward to. Truly appreciate you. Very humble. Much love. That somehow you never get over leaving